Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. For those of you joining for the first time, my name is Andy Parkinson and I'm a professional wildlife and nature photographer from the UK. Now I create short 10 to 15 minute wildlife photography tutorials where I share all of the knowledge and expertise that I've acquired over my 25-year career as a wildlife photographer. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. Today, I'm going to be talking about my most successful image ever, one that featured the hare that you see here, a hare named Lady, but photographed in much more extreme conditions. I called the image Hairball, not very original, I know, but it did go on to win multiple awards across the world, in the USA, the UK and in Europe. Most significantly, it won the overall title or grand prize in the USA's prestigious Big Picture Natural World Photography competition. It also went on to be awarded in Wildlife Photographer of the Year, arguably the most prestigious wildlife photography competition in the world, and it was also awarded in European Wildlife Photographer of the Year. But before we get to explore that image in depth, I wanted to talk to you about what was involved in actually capturing the image, why I photographed it the way I did, and why I think, because let's be honest, it's just a guess, it ended up being so popular with the competition judges and with the public at large. And if you stay to the end of this video, that I'm going to share with you another set of images which I felt were far better and that I was genuinely excited to have captured, as opposed to Hairball, which I felt was just another image, just another of hundreds of images that I captured that same day. A significant part of my obsession with mountain hares is due in part to where they live, the extreme conditions that can occur and the potential images that I can create. This shaky, handheld camera footage of Lady feeding on a high plateau will hopefully give you an idea of the ferocity of the conditions that the hares have to endure, and what I as a photographer consider to be perfect photographic weather. And no, the footage is not speeded up in any way, that is just what the swirling snow is like when the wind is close to gale force. It was seeking out these conditions that would see me and my good mate Kev Morgans. Here's a photo of Kev trying to work out why his hands are cold. Why we'd travel to Scotland for 5 weeks every winter to fully immerse ourselves in the lives of the mountain hares. During the winter of 2019, when Hairball was taken, we had just 1 day of ideal conditions, just one out of 35 long, arduous days trudging up the same hill. This was a massive decline in the level of snowfall that we could reasonably expect at this time of year, especially when compared with years past, when we would often expect to have weeks of reliable snow cover. But this represents the changing conditions to which these animals will have to rapidly adapt or likely perish. Conditions which are ultimately leaving the hares exposed and vulnerable, their winter white camouflage that would have previously served them so well, now much less an evolutionary advantage, more an evolutionary liability. For our photography to be successful, there were 3 elements that we really required, 3 component parts that were fundamental to the kind of photography, the type of imagery that we were trying to produce. Most importantly was a fresh fall of significant amounts of snow, enough to carpet the hillsides and render them as a pristine white backdrop against which to reveal either the comical, cheeky nature of the hares or simply the unrelenting starkness of where these herbivores must try to eke out a living. The downside, of course, was that the deep snow would also give the hares somewhere to hide. It also inevitably made the logistics of actually getting up the hill so much more challenging, but as always with wildlife photography, you do tend to get out what you put in. The second element that we were looking for was freezing temperatures, preferably in the double digits with wind chill, as this turned the snow into more mobile, icy crystals, little shards that would whip and sting our face and eyes. The third and final element was high winds, ideally 50 to 60 miles an hour plus, as these high winds would then cause the mobile snow or spindrift to surge across the open plateau. This clip, which looks like the picture of serenity, reveals this surging spindrift seen from lower altitudes, but you can immediately see the photographic potential. Yes, it inevitably makes the working conditions so much more challenging, but the photographic possibilities become limitless. Contrast that apparent tranquility with the ferocity of what we actually encountered high up on Lady's Plateau. And again, this footage has not been speeded up, and you can immediately see just what it was like to try and work and to function in those kinds of conditions. To spend 6 to 8 hours lying down, trying to protect our face and hands and our equipment, doing ridiculous press-ups to try and stay functionally warm, or simply finding joy in each other's suffering. Photographically, in terms of the perspective, I only had one realistic option, and that was to photograph Lady in profile by lying beside her, and the reason for this is twofold. Most importantly was the dark background that I could utilise, and this was the only possible way of revealing the full extent of the wind-blown snow, which filled the image with interest and detail. In this instance, the dark background was the distant, snow-free lower slopes that lay miles away down the valley. It is also because the hares would sit with their backs to the howling wind, so for me to photograph them face on, I would have had to face directly into the wind and the billowing snow. This approach is fine if I'm able to shoot from distance and from a higher perspective, like with this image here. But in the moment with Lady, where I had to lie down to create the right backdrop, if I'd faced into the wind, then it would have taken less than a second for my lens to become utterly snow-filled and unusable. Another option might have been to photograph from directly behind her, and even though interesting images can be produced, this idea was way too high risk for me, and I didn't want to waste this one precious day of perfect conditions taking unnecessary creative risks, especially when the best option was so obvious. The problem for the hare and for my equipment was that snowdrifts built rapidly against immobile objects, and so we would watch as the hare and our lenses slowly became consumed by the drifting snow. Notice in this predominantly white image just how hard it is to see the wind-blown snow, because it is against a lighter backdrop. So whether photographing in rain or snow, always try to shoot against a dark backdrop, as this will show off the snow or the rain so much better. Over time we knew that soon the hare would have to rise up and shake off its icy shackles. This was the moment that I was waiting for, the decisive moment, the moment why I'd tried so hard to maintain functioning hands, and a change in behaviour that I'd come to expect from her about every 45 minutes or so. What the hare would ultimately do in this moment was anybody's guess. Maybe a shake, maybe a stretch, which I personally loved, or maybe even just a yawn, opera style. She might have even engaged in some coprophagy, and I've had to Google how to say that word, coprophagy, as in the case with Hairball, but I'll explain that particular behaviour shortly. What would really suck, however, was when she'd decide to do something, and then the wind would just stop, ghost-like, and all the drama and intrigue of the blowing snow would just disappear in an instant. Nevertheless, in these rare moments of calm, of respite from the wind, the hare and the images were still so beautiful. Now I think that it's only fair that as I'm dedicating this entire video to the most significant image of my career, that I give credit to and mention the 3 people that played a significant part in its capture. And as luck would have it, all 3 of them were with me on the day when I took this image. First up is the person who, to the best of my knowledge, first found Lady, high on the plateau, and that is my good friend Ewan Crosby, seen here with another legendary hare called Beardy. I'd spent a few days guiding Ewan and his wife Robin with the hares, and afterwards Ewan stayed on to have another couple of days working with them in isolation. It was during this time that he, being younger and fitter than I, ventured much higher onto the plateau, where he captured this image that is called Bashful, the first image, I believe, of what would become a legendary hare. Next up were the first 2 people to really study and note Lady's unique behaviours, that being her approachable nature and the frequent repetition of her washing, feeding and stretching routine. They were the aforementioned Kev Morgans, seen here modelling this year's new winter collection, when what he's actually doing is looking for his lost bag, likely buried under some snow. And then there's Tesney Ward, seen here gesturing to me angrily with a single finger as she labours up yet another hill. Though you likely can't see her in this image, as her chameleon-like camouflage clothing renders her nearly invisible. It was also these two that came up with the name Lady, though it'll come as a surprise to no one to learn that there's one very distinct reason why Lady was perhaps not the most appropriate name. On that first evening, Kev captured this wonderful image of Lady against the fading light, whilst Tez, again on that first evening, captured this more cheeky, comical moment. So coming back to Hairball, so what is it about this image? What is it that makes it special, and what is it that has resonated with so many people around the world and with a number of different competition judges? For me, the single biggest attribute of this image is the cracking of the ice sheet on her back, almost tectonic plate-like, the spindrift bouncing off her spherical form as she nibbles on pellets of her own feces. Yes, that is exactly what she is doing, what coprophagy is. Essentially, mountain hares need to re-ingest their cecotropes in order to get the nutrients that they need. Life in the mountains is indeed hard. Interestingly, it was actually social media and not I that really found this image. To me, at the time, the image was an afterthought and also ran. An image that I was happy to post on Instagram, but certainly not something that excited me. And then it took off. Others, I'm embarrassed to say, saw its qualities before I did. A massive word of caution here, and this is likely one of the most important points that I will ever make. The only opinion that matters on an individual image that you have captured is your own. If you like it or you love it, then that is wonderful, and that is all that matters. If you share an image online and it doesn't get the response that you hope for, as has happened to me on thousands of occasions, then please just shrug your shoulders and let it pass. I know too many people who have had their confidence dealt a blow or shattered by the vagaries of social media algorithms or competition and camera club judges. I have heard the word no infinitely more times over the course of my career than any other word, but I do not dwell. That's not to say it's not annoying or disappointing, because obviously it is, but tomorrow will bring new opportunities and new encounters in nature. So what was the image or images that I took that day that I was actually genuinely excited about? Well, there's a few, and all of them, I feel, illustrate a more interesting and dramatic aspect of behaviour. In comparison now, however, it seems to me that maybe Hairball is the more complete image. So what do you all think? I would love to know. As I descended the mountain that day, this was arguably the image that I was most excited about processing, though its fundamental flaw is perhaps that it's too tight in the frame, too crowded. So what do you guys think? The next image in the sequence has a little bit more space around it. The shake is good, but it is too held back, I believe, by the closed eyes. Or maybe this third image is the best combination of the three. The best shake, a better amount of space, and open eyes. But either way, none of these last three images have ever been awarded, whilst Hairball has excelled. So please do let me know what you think in the comments below, it would be so appreciated. And thank you again for joining me on this journey into the world of the mountain hare, arguably one of my favourite photographic subjects. The next video, I promise, is just going to be a straight photography tutorial, so hopefully you'll be able to join me, and with luck, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again. Bye for now.